My idea is that videos may be a way to increase the efficiency of our game nights. I think my friends who were raised by television in the 1980s may be more likely to listen to a video than they are to listen to me actually talking to them. During the global event, which is hopefully winding down soon, we've been having virtual game nights using a combination of Discord and Tabletop Simulator. I look forward to in-person games again, hopefully in the near future, but I also think these new tools for virtual tabletop gaming are here to stay. People trickle into our virtual game nights over a 1-hour period or so, and information has to be repeated as people arrive. You might say, surely you could just share some notes, send an email, something like that. Well, I don't think most of my friends can actually read. We've been playing Warmaster among other games lately, and we've played maybe just 3 or 4 games of Warmaster so far. We're getting a few things wrong, but we're almost reaching my rules correctness objective. So in the spirit of getting a little closer to that rules correctness objective, I'm going to go over just a few things that we've been doing wrong. Now, if I call it any page numbers, I might even put like some notes in the links, or not in the links, but in the description of the video for my friends who can read. But I'm referencing the newly laid out edition of the Warmaster Rules that were recently posted in the Warmaster Revolution Facebook group. The text, I think, is the same as the 1.1 Warmaster Revolution Rules, but I don't know if the pagination is the same. So first, though, I wanted to just mention army building, right? So we are using the Warmaster Revolution armies. Not the guys up here. We're talking about the Warmaster Revolution army lists down here. That's just a PSA. I think one of my friends might have made his last list from here. But again, we're down here. Warmaster Revolution. This is kind of I think the latest and greatest army lists from the community supported or community created Warmaster Revolution edition of the game. Okay, the first thing I want to talk about is a little tabletop simulator interface thing, right? So I think we had trouble in some of our games where maybe the individual objects were not measuring themselves. If you're not familiar with that, you will see what I mean in a minute. So there are 2 things you have to have for this. One is that you have to have the toggle here for measure movement checked, right? And here we are moving, but there's a second thing that you need to turn on this measuring feature, which is up here under the line tool. This must be set to auto. If you set this to free, then it does not measure this type of movement. So let's set this back to auto. And anyway, that will help make things a little bit faster. So let's get into some of these rules things that, these are things that maybe we knew about, or at least I might have known about at one point, but then forgot. One is the command penalty for casualties. So there's actually an extra -1 for every base that you have lost. So if you're down 2 bases, you're looking at a -2 on the command roll. If you're down 1 base, you're looking at a -1. On page 25, right, of the rulebook I was talking about. Another penalty is enemy within 20 centimeters. This doesn't actually come up as often because usually when you're within 20 centimeters, it's all about the initiative moves. But if you are making a command roll, there is an additional -1 for enemy within 20. Brigade orders. This one is important. So the measurement for brigade orders actually goes to the furthest unit in the brigade, right? So I'll show you what I mean by that. So let's say this is a brigade. Let's get these guys back from the dead there. Let's get a general for illustration purposes. All right, so our illustration general here, he's back here. You measure to not the closest unit for the purposes of the command roll, but to the furthest unit, right? So you could have a situation where our general is within 20 of the closest, but he is outside of 20 for the furthest, which means you're looking at a command roll penalty, right? So again, brigade orders measure to the most distant unit when applying the range penalty. Brigades don't use initiative orders. Page 27, that's another. I don't know if we're really like doing that wrong exactly, but I guess technically, each unit moves individually, right, and gets an individual initiative order. So there's some other things about like supporting charges and whatnot where things can kind of move at the same time, but I don't know, it's just something to keep in mind if we get into a situation where that might make a difference, right? There's no such thing as a brigade initiative order. It is per unit. So movement, character movement. I think that we were moving the characters at the end of like their activation. We were like activating one character. The character was giving their commands, and then we would move that character. Technically, all of the characters move almost in a separate sub-phase, right? Like the characters move, the rest of the command phase is over, right? And they move up to 60. Might make a difference, I guess, in some cases. Another thing it's really easy to do is to accidentally grab the character when you're grabbing a brigade or something and move them with it. But it does, obviously that does make a difference for any additional orders that character is giving in a turn, right? You definitely want to move that character last. Shooting phase, confusion. So confusion is a lot like disorder in black powder. This is something that I just forget about frequently. So you may remember that when a shooting unit shoots, that's what they do, right? Shooting unit shoot. When resolving that shooting attack, let's say the target of the shooting attack rolls one die for drive back, it's called. There we go. It took me a minute to think about that, I think. The drive back roll. Anyway, they're rolling one die for every hit that they took, right, and moving backwards that many centimeters. If you roll a 6 on any of those drive back dice, right, you are confused, and confused is very similar to disordered in black powder. It means you can't be issued an order. You're looking at a -1 on numerous things, like your attack value is a -1. You can read more about confusion on page 77. All right, some things from the combat phase. Enemy facing side or rear is a -1. Illustrate that. Oh, I want some infantry up here. Let's grab these guys. Here's some infantry. So let's say that, I don't know, somehow this happens, right? We've got some dwarves here. We've got some dwarves that somehow got this great flank charge in, right? And if they're really lucky, maybe they ended up like this with some great wraparound and stuff. But anywho, the poor axeman here would be looking at a -1 for these two bases, right? Who are rolling against the dwarves back here, probably rolling 2 dice, right? So it's a -1 to your attack dice if you're facing the side or rear of your unit. Maybe we've missed that once or twice. Support is something that I think we did a pretty good job of in the last game we played, but just a reminder on that is that units to the rear, or I believe to the side also, I always have to worry about, like, am I mixing the black powder rolls with this? But I think it's to the side too, but as long as they're all lined up and to the rear, for example, you are going to get a bonus to combat resolution from supporting units. If you are infantry, cavalry, for example, they do not benefit from support at all. Pursuit. Infantry cannot pursue cavalry. Definitely missed that one, I think, on more than one occasion. So, if the infantry here win the combat against cavalry retreat, infantry can't pursue. Horses are faster than guys on foot, just how it is. Similar thing with flyers, right? Obviously, I don't think we've had flyers in the game yet, but yeah, can't pursue those flyers if you're on foot. Some optional rules that I think we should use, to date avoided, but I actually think this will make the game better. It's the +1 leadership on the first order of the first turn. for all commanders for either a brigade order or a unit order, up to a maximum of leadership 10, meaning it doesn't really benefit your dwarves and elves who have leadership 10 typically so much. But if you have anything less than that, it's a significant benefit, I think. Helps get the game going. That can be one of the frustrating things, I think, for me in Warmaster, is when you have a couple turns in a row where both sides flub their command rolls, right? And then we're just sort of sitting there doing almost nothing. That annoys me a bit. This will help that. There's another rule there on page 112 that will, I think, help this out considerably, which is that the first order for a unit or brigade, if it is failed, still allows that unit or brigade to make a half move. So for infantry, that means a move of 10. And again, it allows just a little bit of something to happen there, even if you flub that command roll, right? It'll also really help out trolls. Trolls seem like they would be pretty hard to use, right? We played a game with trolls, and of course they have some significant command penalties, and it took the whole game almost to get them to move at all. 10 is better than nothing when it comes to movement, so yeah, I think it would also kind of help out with kind of getting the game or keeping the game moving just a little bit. Some other things we haven't encountered yet, and things we might see in the next game if I get to use a dwarf list that I want to try out. Flyers is one of those things. Flyers have this thing called a home back move. Typically move 100 centimeters, right? And they're usually used, one of their common uses, I guess, is to cause that -1 command penalty. So remember that unit within 20 centimeters causes a -1 command penalty. Well, you can zip that flyer over there, drop that behind your enemy lines, right? And now you're giving everybody a -1 to their command rolls, right? So that's one of their most common uses. And you can't really engage those flyers with anything except a shooting unit or your own flyers. So kind of a harassment unit, also used to harass artillery. Flyers have something called a home back move. So since they're so far away, you'd probably never get to move them, again in some cases. So what they're allowed to do is something called a home back, where they roll a die 6 and multiply that by 10 and move that much right back towards a character. So, roll a d6, say they roll a 3 or 4, let's say they roll a 4, so they'll move 40 directly towards a character, right, with the idea of getting within 20 centimeters so that they can be issued orders again with no penalty. And that home back move happens after initiative moves, but before regular moves. So if they do home back to within... it can, or actually, if it gets back within 20 centimeters, I believe it is, you can issue another order to it. Artillery. So we haven't had artillery and cannons and things like that yet. I think I've got some cannons out here. Let's grab these guys. Let's grab these cannons. Let's get some hapless knights here. Cannons, and for illustration purposes, let's grab these guys too. Cannons. Like other shooters, they have to shoot at the closest unit. Cannons measure from the closest point in the cannon unit, so I think they're typically 2 bases. So we've got 2 bases of cannon, and we measure from closest to... Maybe the measurement is 2 base, but this bounce thing is through 1 base. Let's change this to free. I think that means, yeah, if we change it to free, then it's not like snapping to the middle. Right, but again, we'll have to change that back to measure the individual bases. But anywho, Tabletop Simulator, gooey fun times. Let's go. What was I talking about? All right, cannons. So they have this bounce through. When you're firing the cannons, you're drawing a line to the closest point, right, from the closest point on the target, or on the shooter to the closest point on the target, right? And this establishes a line which you're then going to use for the purposes of this bounce through, right? I might have to think about how I'm going to measure this. It's nice to have a little 5 centimeter thing, right? A little piece or something to measure this better. But anyway, bounce is 5, and the full dice of the cannons are applied to the front, the first unit or base that it hits, and then there's an additional base for each, or additional die for each base that it bounces through, right? So that could be another unit, or it could be the same unit, right? So in this case, right, maybe we're bouncing through all three, and so we're looking, this would be pretty brutal, we're looking at 4 dice, right, for the front rank, plus 1 additional die. Again, 2 dice per cannon, 4 dice plus 2 dice plus 2 dice, 8 dice, right, from these cannons. Cannons also ignore all armor, so they can be pretty brutal. They do get to fire when charged, but they don't get this bounce through thing, I think, because they are assumed to be using canister and only firing 1. Like 1 desperate shot there as the charger closes in. Cannons are also destroyed if they are pushed back, right? So if you cause the cannons to retreat, they are destroyed. I guess that kind of represents your guys probably capturing the guns there. All right, I think that's about it. Again, I decided to make this, public to demonstrate that there are a lot of options, right? To communicate, set up your game nights, organize things. I don't know, maybe like me, you're the guy, you're like the little project manager of your game night, right? That's kind of the role I play, I think. So, so anyway, I'm always looking for ways to maybe communicate, make game night more efficient, etc. And I'm hoping that this is one of those things. So, and then also, hey, maybe you're learning like me. Maybe you're learning to play Warmaster 2. Thanks. This has been a test of the Game Night Information Network, and I will talk to you again. Thank you.